Okay, so I'm having issues running the GoPro app through my phone. It keeps lagging and stuff, but so from start to finish, I'd say about 4 years ago, I filed a police report because my dad was being harassed by a couple of drug dealers in Sanpete County. You can go ahead and look at this police report, and it'll explain more about, what they were doing, extorting him, that kind of nonsense. So after that, they sent people to my home at
Your attention,
3100
please. Delta
South,
passenger Corey
8812
Kaiser.
West,
Corey Kaiser, please return to Delta Tickets
Magna,
Monitor
Utah.
for your
So I
arrival.
showed up at my house and somebody came up to my window and said, "Are you arriving or just leaving?" I didn't think anything of it. I've never dealt with anything like this or drug dealers or anything like that. So I said, just arriving. And then they started, driving around my house, hollering at me like, "Oh, we're gonna fucking kill you," just all sorts of stuff. So I ended up leaving. So I left and I went to my aunt and uncle's house, and they let me stay there for a while. I was there for about 7 months. I filled out the application and went to go start my degree in mechanics, and I thought everything had cooled down. And then they found me at my work. I was working at the warehouse for not Associated Foods, but like the previous Albertsons company for northern Utah, southern Idaho. And then I when I was working there, they found me there, and there was a $5,000 reward for me. So I ended up leaving, and I tried to run across state lines. So I tried to run to Boston. So I purchased a Greyhound ticket to Boston, and I tried to run there. While I was doing that, I ended up getting drunk at the Greyhound station, and I called my brother, or my best friend, I should say, but brother is more accurate description, Austin Weicker. And I told him, what was going down and that I was leaving and stuff like that. Well, it turns out that line was compromised, and that they were listening to it. So they ended up following me all the way to, not to Boston because I never made it there, but I made it to New Jersey. And so if you look at the video footage or anything like that, if it's still available from the bus ride to New Jersey, you'll be able to see that I was following to New Jersey. Now that was almost 4 years ago. So I end up, the guy that was after me at the gas station in Columbus, Missouri, convinced me to check myself in to a mental hospital or institution. He said that would keep me safe, and that way I wasn't talking to the cops or anything like that. There's no way that anybody close to me could be harmed because of the fact that I wasn't disclosing information that shouldn't be disclosed. So I do that. They end up keeping me for 14 days just so that I can get enough money to get back to Utah, to Salt Lake. So I end up doing that, and then I come through and I end up staying with my grandma. My grandma lived just off of 35th South in a very crowded apartment complex, so it was a very good place for me to live. So I was living there for a while. I had a few instances of my best friend, Austin, trying to set me up. So he tried to set me up, and then I walked in So we worked for a company through Bacon. And when I say he tried to set me up, like, there's not a ton of evidence, but I'm gonna describe the situation to you. You can make your own judgment. So what happened was I was going to work. It was like maybe a week of regular days, and then I show up one day and Austin's not there. So I go to the gas station, I pick up a few beers, because we usually drink while we're working. It was kind of Austin's thing. So I pick him up a few beers kind of thing at the gas station, and we're walking to the company that takes us to the job site. We break down cubicles. I'll explain something a little bit later that makes this company suspicious, but so anyways, I go to show up and Austin's not there at the gas station, so I pick him up his beers and stuff, and then I go to the job site. Well, I'm going and I walk past this black Chevy Tahoe SUV, never there before, it's there this time. And in the driver's seat is one of the co-workers from the company that I went to, in the driver's seat of the Tahoe. And so I get sketched out because I know that people are hunting me. I have this entire time, never doubted it in my mind at all. So I end up going to the Wells Fargo. It's about half a block over to the left of the route that I take to the job site. So I go there, I connect to their Wi-Fi, and I call up Austin. I'm just like, hey, what's going on? Why is this? And I explain to him what's happening. At this point, I still think he's on my side. So, anyways, I contact him, see what's going on. He ends up coming. We go to the job site and we go, well, we're breaking down, the cubicles and stuff. And I'm still suspicious this whole time. I think that he's setting me up and stuff. So I sneak around the side while they tell me to go, handle this, break down these things, and, set them up to be loaded on the truck and stuff like that. So I go over acting like I'm gonna do that. But instead, I walk around everything. So there's a group of rooms, because it's a conference center, and so there's a group of rooms I can go around and I can meet up to where they are, Austin and my buddy. So I walk around and I meet up about where they are, and I hear the two people who drove the truck of the company grilling Austin. So they're like, did you tell him? What's going on? Why do you? And Austin is shitting his pants. He is so scared. And he is like, I didn't tell him, I don't know what you're talking about. It was just that, And so he's having a hard time dealing with them grilling him and stuff like that. He's very scared and stuff. And so that's when I figured out that it's somebody very important trying to end me, or a group very important. So after that and stuff, I stopped working with him. I ended up trying to kill myself and stuff at my grandma's house, because I have the money saved up, and I was just very depressed, because I was like, this is my brother, this is my family, this is the closest person to me. Just tried to set me up to be killed. And so I just, at that point, I kind of registered how deep it was, how much I fucked up, and even though I did it for the right reasons, like I said, I did it to help my dad out and stuff like that. But honestly, my dad was at the end of his life. Literally My dad died 7 months later from the cancer that I was talking about and stuff like that. My dad definitely would not have wanted me to throw my life away for what I'm speaking of now, you know. And so, I mean, I don't feel like it's wasted because I feel like I did the right thing. I really do. You know, and the rest is between me and God. Nobody else can decide whatever is anything. So, but anyways, so at this point I realized that, you know, people are after me and they are willing to threaten and manipulate the people closest to me to get what they want. Okay, so I, you know, lose my shit, try and kill myself. I end up cutting through like 80% of my tendons in my left arm. And so I lose the use of my left arm. And so I end up going to a mental hospital kind of thing. And I have, you know, my mom coming and checking up on me. She doesn't know the rest of the, you know, story kind of thing because I'm kind of, at this point, still scared to tell her. You know, so I'm just like, you know, I'm just having a hard time. I'm very depressed and stuff like that. So she lets me stay with her after I get out of the hospital. Because, you know, I almost lost my life. I lost the use of my left arm because I cut through so many tendons and stuff like that. But, anyways, let's get back on topic. So, I'm gonna check and make sure everything's still recording just because this might be using a lot of battery. Okay, it's still recording. We're still at 41%. Okay, so I end up staying with my mom for a while and I end up getting a job working with her, you know, and at this time I'm on medication to reduce my anxiety just because they are harassing me constantly. So every day, like, I mean, they rented out the apartment above my mom and stuff like that. Everywhere I go, they have people just, you know, harassing me and just making my life very difficult. So I end up getting a job with my mom and stuff, you know, and it was kind of sheltered, you know, because of the fact that it was a job with my mom and stuff like that. They weren't, you know, grilling the people there. They weren't harassing the people there into helping them, you know, manipulate me or anything like that. So about 4 months goes by, and then this is the Fresh Market on 39th and 23rd in Holiday, Utah. So after about 3 or 4 months, they end up hiring this guy on in order to get close to me. Now, for the first couple of months when he was first hired on, it was unintentional. My boss did not know that was the purpose of him hiring on because he was under me, so he was kind of an employee and stuff. But, you know, he kept trying to get me to go to his house and stuff like that. I mean, there's more to it, but we won't get into that in this video. But so that's going on. And then after about 6 months, I have a hooded figure come through and talk to my general manager. So it's just below Eric as far as the manager goes. So he's the assistant store director. And so he finds out through this other person that I'm supposedly a snitch. Okay? So, which is totally out of pocket as far as what actually happened. It was just because I made a few people upset with me going to the police. There's no snitching. I didn't try and get out of charges or anything like that. You know, I've never been charged with anything serious in my life. I'm not a criminal. You know, my very worst charge is a disorderly conduct for breaking a radio at a family gathering because me, my dad, and my uncles kind of got drunk. We got a little bit rowdy, got in a fight kind of thing. But that's the worst ever, period. So, anyways, back on topic. So he talks to my assistant store director, and he tells him that I'm like, some snitch or something like that. And then he goes and he talks to the dairy guy and is just like, hey, I was wondering if it's okay if you worked here while these guys set me up, kind of thing, because they were setting me up. And he lost his shit, the deli guy. He's kind of like a younger kid, not a lot of life experience and stuff, but me and him have gotten into it multiple times, because I think that he's lazy, because I fucked up my shoulder and I was still working with one arm and stuff way faster than him. But anyways, we got into it a lot and stuff, and so when my assistant store director talked to him, he posted on social media. Then all of a sudden I had people coming into my work, oh, he's standing up to us and stuff like that, just really harassing me. And at the time, I didn't know that it was scare tactics. Like, I didn't know that it was just to frighten me. Like, that was the purpose of it. And so, like, I'm thinking that these people are coming to kill me and stuff like that and everything. So I end up going ahead and I check myself into an institution for a couple of weeks while I am making plans to go live in the wilderness. This is how crazy I was, like living off grid, which is all but impossible, but I figured I was gonna die if I didn't, so I went ahead and moved forward with that. Well, during this process, the people that were after me ended up contacting my family. Okay, now this is the first time they contacted my family at all or anything like that. I mean, they've contacted, like I said, my employer and stuff like that, but they've never contacted my family. And so they contacted my family and figured out like where I was gonna be going, up into the wilderness and stuff like that. And I didn't know this until the day that I was being dropped off, because we went to like have a family dinner, for my birthday at a seafood restaurant and stuff, so we went to have sushi and stuff like that. And while I was there, I was showing my uncle my gear, because he's an avid, camper, survivalist kind of person. And so I was kind of like going over my gear with him, like what I have, like, and everything. And the whole time, like, as soon as we got there, the entire restaurant filled up with like thugged out Latinos, like I hesitate to say, Mexicans or anything like that, just because like I don't know that they were that, or I don't know if that's the organization they came from, if it was like, Mexican mafia or cartel or whatever, but I thought it was cartel, and so that day plays out, and they're talking, saying, oh, he's scared and stuff like that, and I'm hearing this while I'm showing my uncle my equipment and stuff. And so at this point, I know that my family knows, and they know, and there's some sort of maybe not agreement. They're not helping them and stuff like that, but my family knows where I'm going, and they know where I'm going. So anyways, we end up taking me up into the wilderness, up into the mountains. And my cousin Sheldon just looks at me, and he's just like, because I'm like freaking out, I'm just like, hey bro, dude, I need more help. I need to get further in. They're here already. And he just looks at me and he goes, I know. And he goes, I know, man. He's like, I'm sorry. And that was the last interaction I had with my family, was them just being like, hey, I know what's going on. I am sorry. So anyways, I end up dipping out, and I end up getting, a few miles away from these people. and stuff like that, because they have radios and stuff. So they position themselves about 3 canyons deep. So like it's a 100-mile long trail where I was dropped off at. But like where I started, you know, you go through and you have like different peaks of mountains, like going alternating right and left. So like you have like Bald Mountain on the very low right, and then, you know, another mountain on the mid right, and then another mountain on the left, and stuff like that. But so I take off and I end up, you know, getting out ahead of them. So I'm on the outside of the encirclement and stuff, and you can hear them talking on radios and stuff, just because when you're up in the mountains like that, when you're up at the peaks, and the peaks are only like, you know, a quarter-mile distant and stuff like that, like you can hear me talking like this 2 miles away and stuff. So I can hear the radios and stuff like that. Well, so I end up finding a place to camp that's on a super steep hill at the very peak, and there's like an overhang, so it's shaded from, you know, the weather and stuff like that. I'm gonna go ahead and check and make sure that we're still recording. I want to make sure. Okay, we still are.